Hi everyone, welcome to another video. I'm Laura Macar and today I am doing the Read Your Country tag. I was tagged already a while back by Pauline from Dancing Alone, linked below, and I'll also link the original creator of this tag below because I haven't looked it up yet, so I can't tell you about it. There are 8 questions and the first one is, what country are you going to talk about? And for me, I'm going to talk about France because that is the country that, when it comes to classics and when it comes to what I know reading wise and author wise from that country, that is the one I know most from because I did my high school in French. But the second question is, before high school and stuff, it's what's your favorite childhood book from your country? Um, this was a tough one to remember because I don't have any of those books here, so I don't have that visual thing to help me remember. I remember getting at one point a whole box full of books, old books from my mother from La Bibliothèque Rose. And one of the books that I remember now is Jojo Lapin, Le Roi des Malins. And I think one of the things I liked about it then was that Jojo Lapin was this very smart rabbit, that he outsmarted everyone, that he stole, that he was the smartest of his friends and got them to do stuff. And in hindsight, thinking about this now, Jojo Lapin is actually quite an asshole, I think. I probably think. Um, so yeah, I don't know if I would like it now, but I remember liking it at the time. And I also remember Le Club des Sept, Le Club des Cinq, or Les Sept, Les Cinq, those two different groups of friends going on adventures and saving people and whatnot. And Fantomette, and I also read a lot of the Narnia books, although those aren't really French, but I read them in French. The third question is, what is a book from your country that you read in school? So I went to a European school, and at that school we had language sections. So there was an English section, a Dutch section, a French section, German and Italian. And at primary school I was in the Dutch section, and when I went to secondary school I switched to the French section. So that's when I did some more French reading. And obviously we read a lot of books, so I won't talk about them all now because the more I think about them, the more come back to me. But one of the authors that came back that we read a lot of stuff from, he wrote plays, was Molière. He's a well-known French playwright. I think everyone that went to French school has written one, if not more, plays from Molière. We started with Les Fourberies de Scapin, which I think is still my favorite, although I've only read it once, well, twice when I was 11. And we also read Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme and Don Juan, and probably more that I can't remember now. Another book that we read in school and that I really liked were Les Fables de La Fontaine, and I liked it because they were animals and they had these morals to them, etc. And also because Jean de La Fontaine comes from the city that my father also comes from, which is Château Thierry. And I knew this because I had gone to his museum once with my grandmother when I was a child. And people that come from Château Thierry are called Castelthéodoriciens. And this is a little nugget piece of information that I was very proud of having, and therefore every time that we had to write a text about a fable, I would be like, Le Castel Théodoricien Jean de La Fontaine, blah 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 blah, because this was this piece of knowledge that, one of my teachers didn't give me, but that I could tell them over and over and over again, being this proud know-it-all that I was. And last, another book that we read in high school and that I was really proud was because I had actually suggested that book to our teacher, because like, hey, do you have something? I had a teacher who, when we were, we had him, Monsieur Pirel, who was awesome, in I think the first 3 years of our high school, for French, and he actually made us read books that we actually would like. So not only French literature, not only those two Molière plays, but also more contemporary or a little bit historical fiction, but things actually written for kids our age. So he also asked us what we wanted to read. Isn't that awesome? These people exist. Anyway, and I so had I told him about one of the books that I recently read, which was L'Histoire d'Hélène Keller, Hélène Keller is a woman that when she was born, she was blind and deaf. And it's about her growing up, and because this woman comes over whose name I've forgotten, but she teaches Helen to communicate by signing letters in her palms. And then it's about Helen actually being this very intelligent child and woman, and going to Radcliffe, and her horizons broadening so much from what their parents were afraid she would have as horizons when she was a child. So I advised that to our teacher, and we read it with the class. Super proud nerd here. And we also went to school with children our age that were either blind or slechtziend, bad of sight. And I remember really these children that to read, they had these huge, there were posters in my mind, but it was just one page on a board, and they had of course they had glasses, of course, and they had to read it from this distance, and still with things that would make it bigger. And it was one of the first times that I saw that my normal is not someone else's normal, that there are many types of normals, and that everybody has a different thing, different way of being, and different way of dealing with stuff. So that was great. And I was proud because it was thanks to me. I was the nerd that, you know, when you got a book from school and you would read it in sections to talk about it with your class, I would be the one that came back the day afterwards like, I finished the book! So, yeah, but you only had to read the first 20 pages for next week. What are you doing? Still proud about that, though. Anyway, next question. Where are we? Fourth question. What is a book set in your favorite area of your country? I don't have a favorite area. France is huge, and I like to switch it up. And I don't come from somewhere per se, because I was born in the Alps and we lived there for 4 years, but the rest of my family is from the north of France. And then afterwards I've lived in the Netherlands in different places, and also 1 year in England. So I don't really have a place I'm from. And if I have a place I'm from, that would be the north of France. And that is not a happy place. But I was thinking about this, and one book that stayed with me that I read in high school in the library, I just took it from the library, and I don't remember at all what the name is or the author is, but it was set at the coast in Bretagne, and it's about this man that, I think it's set somewhere in the Middle Ages, and he was saving his island from troops coming in. It was really this hero, and there was this pride for their island, and I remember really liking that. And I won't ever be able to read it again because I don't know what it is, and there are so many, it's like a needle in a haystack. Won't ever be able to find it, so I'm not even looking. But I remember that. So I think I like the coast, but I also like forests, and I also like mountains, and I also like, I think books that would be set around the Loire in the castles, that would be nice as well. So not really an answer to this question. Then we have, what is a historical fiction book set in your country? I am first going to talk about 2 books from Victor Hugo that are technically historical fiction. First, we've got Les Misérables. This was written in 1860, but set in 1830, so technically historical fiction. If you don't know Les Misérables, tell me. I will gladly talk about this more because it's a wonderful book. Victor Hugo is one of those authors that he is the king of all literature in France. I think it's safe to say. Totor is, by the way, our pet name for him. And this is one of those super well-constructed novels that is really a criticism on justice and the power systems at the time. And the other book that is well known, written by him, is also historical fiction, is Notre Dame de Paris, and it is set in 14-something and also written in 1830, this one, I believe. And this, well, just like this one, it's actually both about characters who are dealt a harsh hand. Here we have Jean Valjean, who, because when he was young stole a piece of bread, has then to spend, I think, 2 decades in total in prison, also because he tried to escape. And then about community, well, the justice systems always trying to find him, and him not getting a second chance, actually, and etc., etc. And here we have also a character that was not lucky, and that is Quasimodo, who is born with a deformity, and he's also partially blind and partially deaf, and that means that no one wants him, and he ends up living in Notre Dame de Paris, and Frollo is his handler, we can say, and it's about what happens when one day he goes out in Paris and he meets other people and Esmeralda and everything. And this also is a wonderful book. Both of these are wonderful. These are both abridged versions. And I have talked about abridged versions before. Hey, I've got something written. Oh, I've written in this. This book has been in Barcelona from the 22nd of May 2006 until 27th of May 2006. So around then is when I read this. Oh, that's cute. I used to write in books, apparently. Here I have nothing. Anyway, wonderful books. And another piece of historical fiction that is not actually written by a French author, but that is still set in France that I really liked, is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr, and that is set during the Second World War, and we have two children, one French girl who is blind, raised in Paris, and then has to go to Saint-Malo. Took me a while to remember that, because she has to flee Paris. And it's also about a young German boy who has to become a soldier. And these two characters are so sensitive, so heartbreaking, and that whole story of how they lived through the Second World War was so well done. So I would recommend that one as well. Then the sixth question is, what is a classic book from your country? There are so many. If I think about the class French that we had in high school, it was always, oh, literature this, literature that, and it's like, oh, don't you know this one? Victor Hugo's books are classics. These are known and beloved, well, not by everybody, but by any good people, judging. And then another author that wrote a lot of classics is Victor Hugo. I'm currently reading Germinal by him, thanks to Pauline from Dancing Along, who is organizing a read along with this one. But he also wrote L'Assommoir, which I have partly read. I read this partly in high school, and halfway through the year, our teacher got ill, and we were 250 pages from the end. And the teacher that we got after that was like, nah, we're not doing this. So I never actually finished it because it was a struggle, especially if you're doing it with a class and you have to take your time to read it. For me, that became more of a struggle, so I think that now I would absolutely love it. I also absolutely loved Au Bonheur des Dames by him. Looking forward to rereading this one anytime soon. And I also read Nana, but he has a lot of other books from the Rougon-Macquart series as well. And that actually brings me to the seventh question. What is a book from your country that you haven't read but would like to read? So, wait, let me put these ones away first. I have started my collection, we'll say, of my physical Émile Zola books. So I want to own all 20 of them. But I still have now La Fortune des Rougon, which is actually the first one of the installment, and I have Le Docteur Pascal and also L'Assommoir that I want to read, and I have all of that series as an ebook, but I would love to actually own them as well, so I'm keeping my eye out for them, which is hard here in the Netherlands, as you can imagine. But I also want to read Le Rouge et le Noir by Stendhal, and I want to read Boule de Suif by, I think it's Maupassant, and I also want to read at one point something from Balzac, because apparently he is awesome as well. So there are still a lot of books, a lot of classics that I still want to read. And I realize now I'm making time for that, so maybe that should be a project of mine. One French classic every month. Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, last question is, what are some of your favorite authors or books from your country? I've already talked about Émile Zola, and my favorite one of those is Au Bonheur des Dames and Germinal. Wait, let me show them again, because you can't see them enough. Germinal, I'm going to talk about this more. And Au Bonheur des Dames, also absolutely fantastic. The love story in this has just had me well, looking for all of those passages and just reading those passages again. Love this. And I also talked about Victor Hugo. But I think other books that I really used to love, and my favorite author was Bernard Werber, who wrote science fiction. He wrote the Fourmi trilogy and also a trilogy about the afterlife. So we've got L'État Natonaute is the first one, and the second is L'Empire des Anges, and the third is this one, which was my favorite, is Nous les Dieux. But I reread this year, and it didn't really stand, the writing didn't really stand the test of time. So yeah, but I used to absolutely love him, and I think I have about 15 books of his. And other book that I really love is Le Silence de la Mer by Vercors. This is historical fiction, and it's set during the Second World War in France. It's actually been written also during the Second World War. This was written in 1941, and it's about a young woman who lives with her father, and because there's a lot of space in their house, they're assigned a German soldier who has to live with them. And they decide, as a sign of protest, to accept him but not talk to him. But every evening, this soldier goes to the living room and talks, and he's very friendly. He's learned French. And through him talking, they discover that he doesn't really like being a soldier at all, and he does love his country, but he also loves France, and he's really just this soft soul. And she, the woman, starts developing feelings for him who are very intense, and that is what I absolutely loved in this book, the intense feelings that she has for this man and how that develops. It's absolutely wonderful. There's a movie also that was made in 1949, which was fantastic. Then there are a few authors that I do want to mention because I did absolutely love them, but I don't know if I would still love them now. And actually for two, I know that they don't really. So I've already talked once about Amélie Nothomb. I've read recently a book by her, which was Ricky à la Houppe. This is a Journal d'Hirondelle that I remember liking, and I think this was set in a prison and there's stuff happening. And my favorite is L'Hygiène d'Assassin. But after having reread one of her books recently, I have to say they're not what I remember them to be, because they all have the same feel to them and the same kind of twist, and it's just not my jam and bread anymore. But I did absolutely love her, and I still think Hygiène d'Assassin was amazing. But the other author that I used to really like was Catherine Pancol, and this is her book Les Yeux Jaunes des Crocodiles, and this was the first of a trilogy that was also all over the place and has been translated. And this is about a mother and her two daughters and their life in Paris, and them just coping with life and falling in love and trying to find what their dreams are, etc. And I really like this when I read this about 10 years ago, because it has this, it just keeps going. The characters are felt very realistic, and I like the writing also. But earlier this year, I read another book by her that is actually a sequel to this, I believe. I think so. We've got this trilogy, and then there's another trilogy, Les Muchachas, and then we've got Les Trois Baisers, which is the one that I read this year, and I didn't like it at all. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like that the plot doesn't really go. It just keeps going, but it doesn't really go anywhere. And I didn't like the writing. So, previous favorite author that I don't like anymore. It's very sad, actually. So that brings me to the last author that I really like, and I absolutely love this book, and that is Anna Gavalda, and this is Ensemble c'est tout. This is one of those heartwarming stories where we have four very different characters who find themselves living in the same apartment, and all four of them are completely broken inside, and because of living together they start to mend and heartwarming, etc. But because of my experience with Catherine Pancol and Amélie Nothomb, who I used to love and now don't, same with Bernard Werber, I don't know whether this would be the same. I'm afraid of rereading this and not liking it, of not finding this heartwarming feeling. So I don't know whether I want to try it again. And live through those feelings and be happy, or have the risk of those feelings that I had not being there and then breaking this nostalgia that I have with this book. So I don't know what to do. But I used to really like Anna Gavada. So I'd love to hear if you have, do you have this similar experience that there are authors that you read 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and now when you read them, you're like, I like this, but this is bad. And it shows growth, but it's also kind of sad. So I'd love to hear your experience about that. I really like this tag because it allows me and hopefully you to talk about things that you know from your own country, literary wise, that in my case at least, I learned during high school and I realize now have impacted me, especially because I don't live in France now. So I have these feelings of nostalgia from things that I learned during high school, and then I've had this kind of break where I've been reading mostly English or Dutch books. But I'm learning now through Zola, through Victor Hugo, that the French classics that I felt were enforced on me at that time, like this is good, but I prefer to read YA. Now I see how awesome they are, how well constructed, what they are doing. So I'm happy this tag got me to talk about those. I'm going to tag a couple of people below who I'd love to see this tag from. But if you don't have a channel, if you don't want to do the video, but you do want to share some things, please go ahead, because I would love to hear your experience also growing up and with these classics and how you see the books written from the country you're originally from. That's all for now. I hope I'll see you in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Well, no, wait, I should say that in French. Haha.